growing up, it was sort of this, you don't want to cause your brothers in Christ to stumble. And I think there's value to that. I don't want to cause my sisters in Christ to stumble. You know what I mean? Like, I get that selfless attitude, but I also understand the perspective that says something to the effect of, well, I can't just make all of my decisions based on what some guy with a dirty mind is going to think about what I'm doing. You know, does that make sense, or what do you think about that?
I'm completely on board with you on that one.
Okay.
Like I said, the beginning of my very first chapter of my book, I'm talking about lies that we believe about physical beauty. And one of the lies that I address in there is it's a guy's fault if he's tempted. Because I believe that that's not necessarily the complete case. Yes, a man has a responsibility if he sees a tempting image to not dwell on those thoughts. But I do think that a woman has just as equal of a responsibility not to intentionally put that temptation in front of him. We also have to realize at the same time that sexual temptation isn't just a guy problem. You know, that girls can struggle with lust as well. I think that both genders have responsibilities to avoid creating temptation for each other, but also avoiding falling into temptation themselves. So I think that that's important for us to realize that both genders have both responsibilities.
Right. And I guess what I'm coming at is more from the perspective of, like, and it is coming from that, like, the church kind of legalistic culture that we grew up in, that sort of said, like, you don't, like, nothing, like, you just need to, you don't want to cause anyone to stumble. So it sort of became this, well, it's as if okay, it's the girl's responsibility. I'm trying to kind of see the nuance in this, because I think I'm mostly on board with what you're saying. Like I just as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized, like, I don't like the idea that the responsibility is on a woman to police, like, what's going on in a guy's head. I think that on a practical level, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that just that hard and fast rule, I've always kind of felt uncomfortable with. I guess that's kind of my perspective, but I haven't, like, thought a bunch about it. That's just kind of my knee jerk reaction to talking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that a woman is responsible for policing what happens in a guy's mind, but I do think that they do have at least some responsibility if they are aware of the fact that what they are wearing is putting temptation in front of someone. I do think that is their responsibility.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's just acknowledging the fact that immodesty isn't just a girl problem and that sexual temptation isn't just a guy problem. We both have both responsibilities.
I think that like, if there was a comparable, like, well, guys need to do, and maybe there is, and I'm just not thinking about it. Is there a comparable something that guys need to be, like, that you can say, just in the way that it's helpful if girls do these things because it helps their fellow man. Is there a thing that guys do to help the women do their best? You know what I mean? Like, if there was something that you could point to there and say, well, that's kind of annoying that we have to think about that kind of thing all the time, but if it's helpful to you guys, then we'll do it. Is there something like that? Like, is there something we can point to?
I actually, in addition to some of the stuff I was talking about with that lie I was addressing about a guy's fault if he's tempted, I also wrote an entire appendix addressed to men in my book. And so there are a handful of tips that I provide to men if they are wanting to go on this journey of being more aware of their modesty and things that, you know, could bother a girl in that sense. And I do kind of talk about avoid flaunting your body or your muscles, you know, like the guys that are like ridiculously ripped and all that, because let's just face it, for some of us, it makes us go crazy and want to treat you like a piece of meat. I know you talked about that in your videos, but
yeah.
And then I also talk about wearing a belt and not letting your pants sag. That's a problem. Let's just face it. And then keeping your shirt tucked into your pants when that's an option.
Hmm.
that kind of a thing. And then of course I make the comment avoiding Speedos, and I just say, I'm going to leave it here.
Just leave it at that.
It's that kind of stuff though, that you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
sharing this from a girl's perspective, guys. Just think about this twice.
Yeah.
And then
I think that, yeah, I think it mostly kind of sort of comes down to, though, that it's true that those are good things for guys to keep in mind. But but also at the same time, like, men are definitely like visual creatures, whereas women are more like relationship focused, or
Mhm.
community focused, maybe would be a better way to say that. I don't know. It's like the list of ways that you can help the opposite sex. Like, they can kind of differ in ways, and it just kind of makes, I don't know, it makes for an interesting discussion in a lot of ways. So I think that stuff is always really interesting to talk about. I appreciate you sharing your perspective on it.